Hello there, it's Adam Eason here. Today I'm talking about the brain. I'm going to talk about two things to do with the brain, and that's it. The brain has long been an organ of fascination, which has intrigued researchers with its complexities. All of us know it's an integral part of your bodily functions. It's pretty important, from ensuring an efficient supply of oxygen around your body, to coordinating the various movements of your body, to dispensing chemicals, regulating hormones. Your brain works it all, and without it we'd be dead. We don't yet have jellyfish technology to just crack on through life brainless, though some people do give it a good try. Neuroscience, it's a majorly developing field, and the more that I find myself dipping into it, the more I realize what a rabbit hole it is. Kind of more like a black hole. You get sucked in, and then it's just kind of endless. There's so much more to learn about the brain, and it's researched extensively. Those existing research findings don't always make it out into public awareness. So, there may be a bunch of cool facts about your brain that you remain unaware of. So recently, I wrote an article sharing some points, that went up on my blog, a lot of discussion ensued. And the brain, made of grey fats and proteins, one of the most intriguing and complex parts of the human body, naturally also, warrants lots of discussion, lots of interesting discussion. And in order to help people foster a greater understanding of the brain, especially with regards to the neuroscience of hypnotherapy, helping people sort of overcome and become educated about certain myths and misinformation that they may have heard about the brain and its functioning. So I recently wrote this article. I'm sharing a couple of snippets that were aimed at being a bit fun and interesting about our grey matter. And wherever you're viewing this video, I'll share the link on that page somewhere so you can go and have a read if you wanted. But there were two specific areas that seemed to capture people's interest the most and created the most discussion. And I thought I'd record a short video about those 2 points, in particular because they were very relevant to hypnotherapy and hypnotherapists, and were being discussed in the sort of circles that I frequent online. So, as the central part of your nervous system, that the brain receives, makes sense of, it processes much of the information of your experience. And one area where there's been lots of research into hypnosis happens to be the area of pain. There's a lot of research funding to explore pain, and there's not usually very much research funding into hypnosis. But the area of hypnosis for pain relief is one of those areas that's had more funding. And hypnosis is an incredible application. It's been shown to be able to make a profound impact upon the pain experience of many people. But interestingly, and this is the point that was raised, that I ended up discussing a great deal, is that the brain itself is incapable of feeling pain. So while it's widely believed that your headache is because of pain stemming from your brain, it's actually not the case. Your headache may be stemming from various other factors, and I'll speak about that in a moment. But according to neurologists, the brain may have layers of coverings and blood vessels containing various pain receptors, but the brain itself has no receptors at all. So this could explain, of course, why brain surgeons are able to perform surgery on their patients even when they're conscious. There's some amazing video footage that you can find on YouTube, where there's where people are being spoken to whilst undergoing brain surgery, for example. There's some really cool references online as well to whereby hypnosis has been used as part of the initial anesthesia as well, the sort of localized anesthesia when the early parts of the surgery are occurring. So If the brain doesn't feel pain, why do I get headaches, Adam? Was the, the topic of many a conversation that ensued. And the pain experience for us all, begins when unpleasant stimuli activate sensory nerve fibers that are called nociceptors. And these specialized fibers, which are located in the skin, and the muscles, the joints, and some organs, they transmit pain signals from the periphery to the brain, where the message of pain is ultimately perceived to some extent. Now, the brain itself doesn't feel pain, because there are no nociceptors located in the brain tissue itself. And this feature explains, this point that I was making earlier, that neurosurgeons can operate on brain tissue without causing a patient discomfort, or not too much, and in some cases can even perform surgery while the patient is awake. And actually can see how the different parts of the brain are affecting their ability to speak and so on. Headaches themselves, though, they're a different story. Even though your brain doesn't have nociceptors, there are nociceptors in layers of tissue, known as the dura and the pia, that serve as this protective shield between the brain and the skull. In some situations, chemicals released from blood vessels near the dura and pia can activate nociceptors, resulting in headaches such as migraines. Increased blood flow could also trigger a migraine, which is why migraines are considered, vascular headaches. Migraine headaches are often throbbing and are accompanied by hypersensitivity to light, sound, and touch, which I'm sure you're aware of if you've ever experienced one. They're awful experiences. The more common tension-type headaches do not share these sort of migraine features, although nociceptors are undoubtedly activated in tension-type headaches, in part from the excessive contraction of muscles. Other triggers that engage these nociceptors, remain unknown. I mean, the entire topic of pain remains largely unknown. It's hard for me to put that into a nutshell. But a very important characteristic of tension-type headaches is that they are increased significantly in stressful situations, presumably by sensitizing pain circuits in the brain. A major development, or rather, a major difficulty in the development of new therapies or new approaches for headaches and relief of headaches is that there are no animal models, for example, that can distinguish between these types of headaches. Nevertheless, scientists continue to be hopeful that their growing knowledge of the unique chemical factors that activate nociceptors in the head, compared and contrasted to the rest of the body, will lead to the development of new drugs that are particularly effective in alleviating the symptoms of the most common headaches as well as migraine. This is one area of some interest. The other area, the other thing, the other point that ended up kind of growing out of the article that I'd written was about this fact that and I'd mentioned that the brain is a pattern-seeking machine. We are pattern-seeking machines. It's actually one of the main functions of our brain that we use the most, and many people don't even realize it. In the modern world, today's fast-changing environment with all its stimulus and distraction, the ability to make quick subconscious or automatic connections based upon our previous experiences is incredibly useful, and it's also necessary, right? So if we start from the beginning with the term apophenia, the word itself means the search of connections of seemingly unrelated subjects, from finding faces in different places to having lucky numbers in the lottery, picking your numbers attached to different things going on in your life, for example. Is this kind of almost like a crude form of pattern recognition. But if we get more complex. A different example can be how our brains process information regarding complicated situations based upon past experiences. You could perhaps think of the way that master chess players develop strategies, and some of the complex ways in which traumatic events have affected and influenced people, in complicated and complex fashion in their modern day, in their existing day-to-day life. And this is the type of superior pattern processing, what's referred to as SPP, that a lot of scientists argue has made our species so advanced. We most likely owe our ability to understand language and have such a vivid imagination, and create and have the sort of inventions that we do, to SPP, superior pattern processing. So without going too heavily into medical terms that kind of send people off to sleep, the most basic explanation is that the way our neurons are connected and how those connections are made and strengthened through time is what's beyond our complex way of thinking. And this is the foundation of all research connected to pattern seeking in our brains. Granted, this process is so important. It's harnessing it in our daily lives is likely to have a big impact. It's an incredibly powerful thing we have sat up in our head. So how might we use pattern seeking to our advantage? Those of us within therapeutic circles, or that teach or work therapeutically, certainly I speak for myself when I say, I encounter so many people that have adapted, or created maladaptive patterns, patterns of thinking and feeling and behaving that are causing them a lot of problems, and that's because we're seeking to create patterns. We're learning habitual ways of thinking, behaving, and feeling that are not always good ways and not always useful. So with each recurring action that we take, we teach our brain how the action itself is connected to the effect. Therefore, the more that we reinforce our actions with explanations, the better our brain will find motivation to do those things again. So for instance, for example, each time something makes you happy, whether it's big or small, attempt to pause and explain to yourself how you got here, how you arrived at that. If you pay a compliment to a stranger and see them smile, remind yourself that you enjoy seeing other people's happiness, and therefore you're going to create a connection with other people's happiness and that of others, which is likely to make you, a more lovely human being. Now, after you have that as have created an assured connection, due to pattern seeking, you'll end up both, doing acts of kindness more often and finding more enjoyment in them. You can do similar things. A different idea is each time you encounter a memory, for example, try to remind yourself of how and why surrounding memories made you feel happy. If you're telling a sad memory, for example, you might like to remind yourself about a time or a place close to the event that was positive to you in some way, in order that you can actively teach your brain that even bad experiences can come with some good and come with some deeper learning and some reflection, for example, and make you a better person, thus creating a more progressive, positive outlook on life in general. And these actions might seem small and they may take some time to work, but once your brain's kind of internalized them and made them into habits, similar to some of the old, negative forces of habits, it gets a lot easier. You've probably heard of Donald Hebb's saying, neurons that fire together, wire together. If the type of connection between the neurons is to seek a positive idea each time, a better, more positive way of thinking will be reinforced. The other big reason why pattern seeking is useful is because it's one of the easiest ways to learn. Using something that our brains do effortlessly to remember new information is a smart technique. And the way that this method can be incorporated into studying, for example, is pretty simple. If you have a given rule, try to gather the evidence supporting it to yourself. So, if you think of it like figuring out yourself the Pythagorean theorem by mapping it all out, that way you remember the pattern itself and not just the numbers. You're not just trying to, recognize and remember the numbers. And if that doesn't work, or rather, it's not just maths, for example, that this works. Well, anything you learn from your own experience, finding it and proving it more than once in your active life, thus searching for a pattern to add to the list of proof, the list of experiential reference that you have is much easier. It becomes much easier to remember, to recall, and to habituate, because there's a much more vivid story that your brain can archive. A different technique is to make connections between your own field of study and something which you already know. For instance, explaining the way black holes work with a ball and a piece of fabric, or if you've ever seen sci-fi films, people attempt to explain black holes with pieces of paper and they fold them and so on. If you've ever seen the film Interstellar, for example, I recognize that not everybody's a sci-fi nerd geek as I am, but technically patterns are everywhere. So explaining them with something not as abstract and finding out why they are similar helps you learn the more complex and not tangible theories. It's one of the reasons that when I'm teaching, for example, I use a lot of cultural references or stories from my life, or I make reference to my favorite TV shows, where a character has been doing something similar to the type of, theoretical technique or proposition that I'm making in class. And people can begin to create connections between the two. Pattern seeking, it's a natural benefit we have. So using it to expand our knowledge is extremely easy once you know its benefits. Pattern recognition, it's already embedded in our brains. It's a way of survival ever since we started evolving as a species. And that means that, if you looking at the present, we've had enough time to perfect it as human beings. It's a process that we're incredibly good at. Harnessing it and building on top of it is something that we're all very capable of doing. And the more we use patterns to better our learning, to ask more questions, to improve our outlook on life, the easier it gets. So, with that in mind, give a few of these ideas a try, see how you go with that. Your brain is the ultimate processor that resides in your body. It's there for you to utilize and yeah. Every minute, every second it's retaining and receiving, lots and lots of different pieces of information, often from different body organs. And then it's kind of integrating, forming wider, more complete picture of your experience and of your world. It's cool to therefore learn a bit more about how to utilize it and so on. And of course, this notion of the sort of superior pattern processing is something which is incredibly valid to therapy and the neuroscience of psychotherapy that I'm kind of spending quite a bit of my time working on and interested in at the moment. Okay, that's it for today's video. Please do subscribe to the channel. Do go explore our college website, members areas about our online courses and live class-based courses as well, on the subjects of self-hypnosis, hypnosis, hypnotherapy. That's all for today. Thanks for tuning in. Bye for now.